was it Rasmussen that asked people, I'll have to dig this up, so don't quote me, but I saw a poll from one of these places that asked people, have you ever filled out a mail-in ballot for a spouse or someone who lived in their house? There was something like 40% of respondents said yes. That's fucking illegal.
Yeah.
Every one of those ballots should be discounted. Where was the investigations, right? So the idea, like,
oh, wait. You've got a very important claim. Like, let's investigate it rather than just being like, well, that seems bad. Let's move on. Like, wait, no, let's sit on that. Let's find the link. Where's the link?
Okay.
Like, this is a big deal. I'm going to be pissed if this is real. That could mean literally.
Will you be pissed, though? Will you be pissed?
Okay.
I don't think so.
Referring to a Heartland Rasmussen Reports poll from December 2023, it's found that 21% of surveyed mail-in voters in the 2020 U.S. presidential election admitted to filling out a ballot in part or in full on behalf of a friend or a family member, such as a spouse or a child. This action is illegal in all states, though some states allow assistance with voting under specific condition, like for voters with disabilities. The poll, conducted from November 30th to December 6, 2023, surveyed 1,085 likely U.S. voters and has a margin of error of plus minus 3 percentage points with a 95% confidence level. 1 in 5 mail-in voters admitted they cheated in 2020 election. This is Tuesday, December 12, 2023. More than 20% of voters who used mail-in ballots in 2020 admitted they participated in at least one form of election fraud. A new telephone and online survey by Rasmussen and Heartland Institute finds that 21% of likely U.S. voters who voted by absentee or mail-in ballots in the 2020 election say they filled out a ballot in part or in full on behalf of a friend or a family member, such as a child or a spouse, while 78% say they didn't. 30% of those surveys said they voted by absentee or mail-in ballot in 2020. 19% of those who cast mail-in say a friend or a family member filled out their ballot in part or in full on their behalf. Furthermore, 17% of mail-in voters said that in 2020 election, they cast a ballot in a state where they were no longer a permanent resident. All of these practices are illegal, the Heartland Institute notes. The results of this survey are nothing short of stunning, said Justin Haskins, director of the Socialism Research Center at the Heartland Institute. For the past 3 years, Americans have repeatedly told that the 2020 election was the most secure in history. But if this poll's finding are reflective of reality, the exact opposite is true. This conclusion isn't based on conspiracy theories or suspect evidence, but rather from responses made directly by voters themselves. The margin of error is plus or minus 3%. With a 95% level of confidence. 17% of those who cast mail-in ballots in 2020 say they signed a ballot or a ballot envelope on behalf of a friend or a family member, with or without their permission. Heartland Institute officials noted that forging a signature on a ballot or a ballot envelope are fraudulent activities that invalidate votes. Among other findings, Rasmussen and Heartland found 46% of those that surveyed voted for Joe Biden, 45% voted for Trump. More Biden voters than Trump voters say they voted by mail-in ballot or absentee, 38%, which was 36% to 23%. 38% of Democrats voted by mail in 2020, as did 24% of Republicans and 27% of non-affiliates. Among those who cast mail-in ballots, nearly equal percentage of Democrat, Republicans, and unaffiliated admitted to fraudulent activities. For example, 19% of Republicans, 16% of Democrats, and 17% of unaffiliated voters who cast 2020 mail.
What the heck is this dude doing? Is he building something as Rob's talking? I hope he's paying attention. I mean, I hope he's paying attention because I'm listening, but even I could barely. Rob's reading so fast.
Ballots say they signed a ballot or ballot envelope on behalf of a family member. On the question of voting in a state where they were no longer a permanent resident, more Republican mail-in voters, 24%, than Democrats, 17%, or unaffiliated, 11%, admitted to doing so. Among all voters, not just those who voted by mail, 11% say a friend, family member, coworker, or other acquaintance has admitted to them that they filled out a ballot on behalf of another person in 2020. 10% have a relative or acquaintance who has admitted to you that they cast a mail-in ballot in 2020 in a state other than the state of permanent resident. And 8% say that a friend, family member, or organization such as a political party offered to pay or reward them for voting.
Wow.
I mean, we could go on, but now let me steelman your position here. This doesn't mean that it's true. It's a poll, right? But what I'm saying,
I'd say the poll looks pretty strong. There's some funny stuff going on here. Like, but this is
now if it's true, and as we could agree, there was a far more substantial portion of Democrat voters than Republican voters. So it's not even making the claim that this is exclusive to Democrat voters. Hell, I'll go a step further. I would think that most of these voters don't even know that this is illegal, right?
Yeah, I'm guessing this is like I signed for my wife or something. Yeah,
right. But it could still invalidate. And there was a big claim, like how many people, right, wives voted for them, that were Democrats and they voted for. Who the fuck knows, right? There is all sorts of claims that you heard, again, anecdotal.
What about even people that got ballots? Like, let's say, like, I don't know, maybe it's not ballots. I just remember Steven Crowder told the story about how he got a ballot to his old house. He got a mail-in ballot to his old home. He doesn't even live there anymore. So someone could have taken that and then filled it on Crowder's behalf. You know, how many times did that happen to people?
But this data seems to back it up, where you had people that were going through, right? What's the word that I'm looking for? There's a specific word for this, right? Where you had people that were coming through and they were offering to pick up like large swaths of ballots. So they go through like a high rise.
Have a good one,
harvest,
Suzanne.
Yeah, ballot harvest. That's
Yeah.
it. That's
Thanks
the
for
word,
stopping in.
right?
Thanks for the
And so
dono.
you're going through these low propensity voters. Who knows? People hand you a ballot. You just check a couple boxes for them. Put
Yeah.
it in the mailbox.
Yeah,
The prob- the
lazy
point-
people get a vote too.
The point I'm trying to make is this: the 2020. Would you at least admit this? The claim that the 2020 election was the most secure ever is fucking asinine.
Yeah.
2024 was probably more secure.
That's something that I never understood. You know, so the only thing that he could admit to is like, well, I think the 2024 election is secure. Like that's the best he could do. But that whole claim about the 2020 is the most secure election is wild. How could it be considered the most secure election in history when there were less security measures there? That would be like if you know, if one of the locks to my doors broke, you know, the front door broke, and or let's just say I got the lock removed. Let's say I got the locks in my house removed, and I said, actually, guys, my house is the most secure that it has ever been. You'd be like, that doesn't make any sense. And so that whole lie that they pushed about it being the most secure is just freaking ridiculous.
So I'd
Okay,
say second most secure.
Okay,
I'm not.
Let me-
Sorry, I don't mean to be pedantic. To the spirit of your point, I would agree with the statement. I don't think it's ridiculous. I think it's probably
where
just
is your
wrong.
evidence that it's the most secure ever?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not an area of like any detailed research on, but I've following politics my whole life. I seem to observe that the institutions around elections seem to be more robust and strong as we learn from each election as new technologies around. Like, and my sense of things is that locally run elections, real big variety of how they're done, and they're extremely secure and get more secure with every election. That's been my general experience. So I'm not.
Yeah, I don't believe that at all. For example, one of the first elections that we had after this was the New York mayor election. And right out of the gate, do you remember the story that or was it sheriff election? Let me pull this story up. So one of the first elections that happened after 2020 was in New York City, definitely the biggest city in the United States, that you would assume that if you were correct about these infrastructures at local places being so good, that it would have ran smoothly.
Oh, sorry, Rob. I just want to clarify. The variety of things speaks to the robustness of the whole system, but not an independent location. Because you know what I mean? Like it's like a stool with many legs, but New York's just one leg. So like that sort of I was making a slightly different point.
Okay, let me just say. So immediately we see the elections after 2020. It's a big clusterfuck. They ended up counting a bunch of test ballots, and then only because I think it was a Democrat primary, because this Democrat was expected to easily win this primary, and all of a sudden he came out losing, and all over social media. And this guy makes the same claims Trump's was making, I think there's a big mistake here. And then they're like, oh yeah, we looked at it, and it turns out we accidentally put test ballots in. And we counted them. Yeah, actually, this guy wins. And it's like, holy shit. So I'm to believe that in this massive city, right, because of mail-in ballots, they fucked up royally in the immediate election after the 2020 election. But it's absurd. Not only is it absurd to think that things like this could have happened in 2020, but contrary to that, it was the most secure ever. Now, we know for a matter of fact that even European countries say that they don't want mail-in ballots because it's risky, because it's unsecure. You agree with that, right?
I don't know Europe's deal with mail-in ballots.
Okay, let's do this. Would you agree in principle that mail-in ballots, both for mistake reasons and fraudulent reasons, would be easier to have mistakes?
I could see it being more logistically complicated, but I don't know. I've seen data that there's a higher rate of error.
There sure is. There certainly is, and I could bring up the data here if you like at some point.
Oh yeah, I'd
But
love to see it. Yeah.
It's logically makes sense too. For example, when you go and you fill out the ballot, you can make mistakes while you're there filling out the ballot in person. But think of all the extra levels of mistakes that you could make. Not only do you have to fill out the ballot in a very similar way, but then on top of that, you have to properly address the envelope. You have to have the proper postage. You have to have the proper signature that needs to be verified in some cases. So there's extra levels of this. And in any one of those levels, you can make a legitimate mistake, right? If that's the case, then your ballot isn't counted. And so the error level for mail-in ballots historically, even in the United States for places that allowed it, has always been precipitously higher than the error for people that are there in person. In addition to that, it's much easier to have fraud. This poll proves it, of people that are voting in ways that they shouldn't, in part because people don't know, and in part because if you did want to cheat, it's much easier to do so with a mail-in ballot than having to go and show up in person. For example, Your neighbor could have passed away. It's easier to get her ballot in the mail and fill it out than it would be to show up in person and pretend to be your neighbor. It's just true. And we can see that historically in this country that there has been higher percentage of ballots that haven't been counted when we've had mail-in voting. So I'm supposed to believe then that in a time where, because of the pandemic, we massively changed the way we vote in states all across this country, and for the first time there were mass levels of mail-in ballots, that all of a sudden it became more secure
Then I suppose than 2016
or any other election in the history of the United States. We were told it was the most secure election ever.
I would be open to seeing that evidence, and this isn't a position I hold like wildly solidly. Like if I saw better data, 2016 was more secure, I could see that being the case.
And they always try to refer to like the data, but it's just like Rob is arguing from a logical standpoint. Like he's arguing from logic here, and it's and common sense. Like you don't need data to show you everything, the data and the polls to tell you that, oh yeah, if you do the mail-in ballots, it's going to be more open to fraud or just mistakes or error. Like it's going to be open to way more. You don't need data to show you that. It's just common sense.
Like, yeah, it's not like I'm conceding the point. I'm just saying like that wouldn't be a galloping shock to me. I was just guessing that 2020 was probably the more safe. But yeah, I could see the case for that. It just doesn't affect my three premises.
It might not, but here's the point I'm trying to make, right? The problem is anytime there's legitimate questions, and you'll at least agree to this, that roughly half of America thought that there was fucked up shit with the 2020 election. You'd agree with that?
You mean enough fucked up shit to be determinative?
Well, no, I mean that a huge portion of this country is like, we have significant questions about the 2020 election.
Sure, 38-ish.
Okay, sure, whatever. That's a huge portion. You know?
Yeah, and they're wrong.
30%. Well, they might be wrong.
Who are wrong?
Right? They might be wrong, but instead of there's a pattern when it comes to government fucking up, right? That we see constantly. Instead of saying, okay, let's sit down and try to address your concerns, they make bold fucking claims like it was the most secure election ever, the most secure ever, and that's clear.
Yeah, and they always do that. They can't just admit when they made an error, and that's why people don't trust the government, because they just lie and they don't accept their mistakes. You know, they'll be like they always do the opposite. Like, not only you're wrong, but it's the opposite. So it's like not only was there the 2020 election on the level, but they'll be like, but it was the most secure election of all time. You know, when we had concerns about the jab, they'll be like, the jab is not only safe, but it is absolutely the most safest, jab of all time. Like they always have to go hyperbolic the other way. And it's like, okay, well, we can't trust you. Like there might be some health concerns with the jab. No. There is nothing wrong with the jab. It is the most safest jab. And it's like, dude, like when you go hyperbolic the other way, it just makes us think that you're lying to us.
Clearly bullshit. So then if you're one of those people that had concerns, you're like, well, wait a minute. They're clearly full of shit. Clearly, they might say, of course, shit happens. We were testing out a new voting system, so there could have been fucking errors, legitimate, fraudulent, whatever. But there's no evidence that it was enough to overturn the election. They could have said that, but instead they said, no, it's the most secure ever. Just like with the pandemic, they didn't say.
I think they did say that.
No, they.
So now he's pivoting to, well, did they say it was the most security? Yeah, no, they did. They did. It wasn't just Rob that heard it. It's not like I'm sitting here being like, Rob, did they really say that? It's like I heard that too. We all heard it. We all heard that lie. This was the most securest election of all time. So where does this dude get off with just lying and being like, well, did they really say that? It's like, Rob's not the only one that heard that. We all heard it. Heck, it was parroted to us by people like this dude here.
They said it was the most secure election ever. That's what they said.
I think that was like the headline. And then they said all the details. Like it was probably a press conference or something, right? Some press statement. Like
that would be the equivalent if you said, Rob, can you open this peanut butter jar? And I said, I am the strongest fucking human being that has ever existed. And yes, I can open the peanut jar. You'd say, when someone said, what a fucking bullshitter. Why would I believe anything this guy says? He's clearly not the strongest ever. And you'd say, yes, but he did say that he could open the peanut jar. Okay. Yeah. And the point is they oversold, which makes you not believe the shit they say underneath.
I'm glad we have a new rule, Rob. I'm glad we have a new rule that when people exaggerate, they can no longer be trusted.
So what's it called? Oh wait, hold on.
Do you trust Trump if he exaggerates?
Oh, that was kind of my ironic point. I was doing
Okay.
the flip thing. I think we got a sock turned inside out here.
The
but
difference is like,
So yeah, he was making the point like, oh, again, and that's their other move. This is the other lefty go-to move. So when we point something out, they can't just take responsibility or be like, yeah, the Democrats shouldn't have done that. And then they have to always pivot up, but Trump. The problem with their logic when they say but Trump is that they get pissed off when Trump does that. They all say Donald Trump's a huge liar. He lies about all this shit. But when we go, oh, okay, well, listen, clearly the left media or the left government, whatever, they lied about this being the most secure election. Then all of a sudden they could show the benefit of a doubt. Like, well, listen, maybe the headlines say that. Oh, well, listen, they were just being exaggerating. But you know what? That's not what they literally meant. Like they could give all this benefit of a doubt to the Democrats. But when Trump says something like, oh, it's going to be a bloodbath. Oh my gosh, can you believe the violent rhetoric Trump is using here? Oh my gosh. And they all melt down. So that's their problem when they try to say, but Trump, is that they get pissed off whenever Trump does any of this shit. But when the Democrats do it, oh, well, then they come up with all these excuses.
And individuals saying something's different than investigators that are making a claim that 40% of the country wants to hear. And they're like, God, trust us, it was the most secure ever. And it clearly wasn't. It clearly was not. It's a fucking joke. There's no,
God bless you too, Brian.
It would make no sense. For example, in my state of Pennsylvania, just anecdotally, you would not believe the people I knew that worked the polls in Pennsylvania. It was like, this is a fucking clusterfuck. We have no idea what's coming on. We have ballots coming in at the middle, like the different piles of ballots. In Pennsylvania alone, the courts had ordered that the polling stations keep separate piles of ballots. They had to keep a pile of ballots from the ones that people voted in day. Then they had to keep a pile of ballots for mail-in ones that there weren't any problems. Then they had to keep a pile of ballots for mail-in ones that were received after the official deadline had passed. Then they had to keep a pile of mail-in ballots for those that signature did not match their voter registration. Of course, what happened in many of these counties was, whoopsie daisy, all the ballots got mixed together. And so now, even if the courts ruled that some of those ballots shouldn't count, we have no way of knowing how many of those ballots there were. Whoopsie. But it was the most secure ever. Trust us, bro. Let me ask you this. Do you believe that this poll has any validity that I showed you?
Well, yeah, it looks solid. Is Rasmussen's not like maniacs?
Okay. Would you then agree that it's an absolute bullshit claim to say that the 2020 election was the most secure ever? If roughly 1 in 5 people were admitting
just say
we
yes.
committed fraud when we mail-in voted.
Like, and I'm just trying to remember the context of this. I think it was the head of the intelligence community's head election guy. I forget his name, right? It was this guy who was saying it just like 4 years ago. But like, if he's going up there in a press conference and saying, this election I just helped run, best ever, right? Is he being like, is it the regular level of like leadership summer camp hype? Or is this like,
see, again, they always give the benefit of a doubt to their side. Again, if Trump were to have said that same thing, then it'd be like, oh, Trump's a freaking liar. He's just a liar. He never says the truth. Oh, but when their side says it, then it's, well, okay, well, what's the context? Was he just kind of being a little hyperbolic there? Was he just being a little exaggerative? Can you just give me a little bit more of the context there?
An abject lie that has meaningful like influence on the 2020 election.
Well, let me ask you. So you could be like, he's just being hyperbolic, but the people that didn't really affect the people's impression. Is that what you're suggesting could be the case?
Well, I would actually say that claim by itself is kind of like a tough thing to like even claim, right? You could be like, today was the stormiest day in the ocean ever. Well, I can't measure every wave, right? Like it's sort of a weird claim to make. And honestly, I'd say maybe a little irresponsible. Yeah. But like,
okay, but nonetheless, if you make that claim about the storm, you can see how if people believe it, it will massively affect their judgment regarding it, right?
Well, if the weatherman says it's going to be an 8.7 tsunami.
No. If like a storm event happens and they say this was the fucking worst weather event ever, this was the biggest flood ever, and people believe it, that's going to then affect their beliefs on that going forward in meaningful ways, right?
Yeah, it's like when you say that January 6th was pretty much 9/11 part 2. It was a new 9/11. Things of that nature, huh? Yeah, it looks like it could affect people's worldview there, huh? Or when he called Trump a bigot, sexist, racist, homophobe, transphobe, Islamophobe, rapist, criminal, all these things. It almost as if it could produce some kind of type of TDS in someone's head, huh?
So, for
unless
example, if you then
they're
said, therefore, we need to
Old
affect climate
Testament
change.
literalists.
What's that?
So unless they're Old Testament literalists, of course.
But the point would be like,
I just
so for example, let's say that I bullshit, right? There's a storm that comes in. Yeah, it's a marginally bad storm, but it's like only the 273rd worst storm that's occurred since 1900. But I convince people it's the worst storm ever, worst storm on record that we have in this area. And therefore you should vote for climate change. If people believe that, you could see how that lie would materially affect their beliefs on that situation going forward, correct?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, if they're like straight up lying in pursuit of some political end, and more than like a little bit of leadership hype, like then yeah, screw them. Like I don't like.
Well,
people
even if
lying
it's
to the
just
public.
leadership hype, what's it matter? If the lie that they tell or the hyperbole they tell is believed by people, that could negatively influence how people think in serious ways, right?
Yeah, that's why people showed up on January.
Okay,
6th.
well then
They got
what
lied
does
to.
your claim matter that, well, how was this? Was it
January
hyperbole?
6th.
You believed it. You just told me that you believed this was the most secure election ever. So now when you're like, that's a bold claim to make, could that have just been hyperbole? It worked on you.
Well, I believed it in a casual, colloquial way. I didn't believe it in a serious, like, analysis way. Like, if I had paused and thought about it, like, okay, this is a serious question. Now I'm gonna like think about it. Okay, but like in passing and as a general, like just talking, like
What a freaking idiot this dude is.
I was like,
I don't know that I
believe.
believe that, because you literally went through the thought
Yeah.
process. You were like, well, maybe not, because the 2024 election was probably more secure. Then you went in, when I pressed you on it, you went into the specifics of why you believed it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's like this leg to now you're like, I didn't really think that. I was just throwing it out there. It's just like,
Oh, no, I apologize. I might have been unclear. A year ago, I hadn't thought about it much. Today, I thought about it a lot for the first time while you're talking to me. Once you talked to me about it, I was like, oh yeah, okay, I could see why you might be a point there, Rob.
so you, okay, well then what you just said is irrelevant. So this propaganda worked on you. This hyperbole worked on you because you believe it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. See, all these lefties are full of shit. They're all full of shit. Like, once you walk them through it, then it's like, whoa, they make up all these excuses and then they get called out on it. It's like proving our point. Like, yeah, but he fell for the propaganda. All these lefties fell for the propaganda. Again, Rob just didn't pull that out of his ass. The whole like, oh yeah, 2020 election most secure ever. Rob didn't just make that up. I heard that too. All of us heard it. We not only heard it from the people in charge, we also heard it from the from the lefties parroting it back to us. Telling, hey, the 2020 is the most secure election of all time, bro. They parroted it back to us. So this isn't just Rob making it up. We all heard it. Okay. And we know that they told us this, so we would stop asking questions about it. So the lefties could shout us down about it, tell us, hey, you idiot, you conspiracy theorists. The 2020 election was the most secure election of all time. Dummy. God, tinfoil hat wearer. Election denier. And that's exactly why they parroted that. Not parroted, but that's exactly why the people in charge, whether it be the media or whoever that guy tried to say said it, that's why they said that. So that way we could stop asking questions. The lefties could shout us down. But Rob brought up good logical points, even if it wasn't out of malice, which I'm sure a lot of the how do you say, the fraud was out of malice. Because listen, people buy the propaganda, like that idiot here in this video. They buy the propaganda, believe Trump's the worst possible evil ever, and you don't think that a lot of those people that have TDS are going to be working in the polls or in the voting system, or even just has a neighbor where has a neighbor that passed away, and so they're going to take their ballot, or maybe they got mailed an extra ballot, or they got mailed someone else's ballot, and so they're like, man, I don't want Trump to win this re-election because he's a racist, homophobe, bigot, criminal, all these terrible things. So I'm going to fill it in for Biden. Like, it's completely possible that happened. Completely possible. So when they say something hyperbolic, well, this is the most secure election of all time, it's like, well, how can that even be possible? Even thinking logically, that's just not possible. But these lefties, man, they're just so like disingenuous. Like, they're just all full of shit. They can't just admit when they've been duped or wrong. It's like they really are like married to this idea that the Democrats are great and that Trump is just this horrible monster. Like they're really married to this idea of that. And when you shatter this for them, or when they get proven wrong, they have to lie or change, move the goalpost, if you will. They're just the worst, absolute worst. So good on Rob Noor. Love this video. Good job, Rob. If you want to see more Rob Noor, go to his channel. This is where this video is from. I have a link down in the description below. Normal or Miracle with Rob Noor. Subscribe to his channel. And also, if you like this video, if you like my commentary, give this video a like, subscribe to my channel. You'll be helping me out a lot. And make sure you catch the Cool Stream live Mondays through Fridays at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time.